story, and the story is about a plastic bottle. But before I can do that, I need to tell you a little bit about plastics. Now, plastics are made from oil, and as we know, oil is a finite resource on this planet. Now, if we think of oil as paper, from a single sheet of paper, you can make a lot of different things. For instance, a paper snowflake, paper chain, or the holding hand people that we all used to make in primary school. The problem is, when you finish using that single sheet of paper, you can't make anything else, and the same is true of oil. When you run out, you can't make any more things from it. And again, with paper, no matter how hard you try, whether it be with glue or sellotape, you can never recreate that single sheet of paper from the things you've made from it. However, plastics are a great thing. We can use them for all kinds of things because you can make them with different mixtures or recipes. So it's kind of like baking. And New Zealanders love their pies. And you also like using plastics because plastics have so many different properties depending on their mixtures. However, because of these different properties, plastics can't all be recycled together in the same way. Conventionally, plastic is recycled by shredding it and washing it, and shredding it and washing it, and then you rinse and repeat for a couple more times before these tiny flakes are then put back into a pot, and then they're reheated. So it helps to think of this recycling process as a puzzle. And because they all have different properties, they're all like individual puzzle pieces. No matter how hard you try, you can't force the corner piece into the center. It just won't fit. No matter how much pressure you put, it never works. However, there is a new technology called the renewed process, and it allows for the recycling of similar types of plastics to be recycled together, and the outcome is a common base feedstock, which is an upcycled material, because from the common base feedstock, you can make other types of plastic, not just the one that was originally recycled, and you can make many different things from it. So, what's the current situation with plastics recycling in New Zealand? Most people think of it as a magical process. This is, in fact, what my friends all think. And that really helps with our image as Middle Earth to the rest of the world. So the common understanding from my friends and people in Dunedin is that they have their bottle, they put it in the recycling bin, and then the local waste management authority, which for me is the DCC, I'm not sure what it is in Wellington, picks up your recycling bin, and then the magic happens. And then you get a brand new bottle at the end of it. Isn't that fantastic? Sadly, that's not really the case. So I'm going to tell you a story about PET. And PET stands for polyethylene terephthalate, PET, or PET. And when I drew out this single polymer of PET, and the polymer is repeated in a chain, and that's what makes PET, I thought that the little guy in the middle kind of looked a little bit like Iron Man. And I was thinking about it, and realistically, PET and Iron Man are actually quite similar. Iron Man is one person, Tony Stark. PET is one type of plastic. However, Iron Man has lots of different suits, and each of those different suits have different properties, and they are suited to different uses. And PET is similar in that it is useful. It has many different properties depending on its application. So, here's your story. You've got your PET bottle, you put it in the recycling bin, and then your local waste authority comes to pick it up. It then goes to a waste processing facility where they sort out all the different types of rubbish, and your PET bottle will get put in a pile with hundreds and thousands of other PET bottles. It will then get squished and put in a container. That container will then go on a container ship, and most commonly it is exported to China and more currently and emergent India. And then in China and India, they are the two countries in the world that actually have plastics reprocessing capabilities. So they use the conventional recycling methods I talked about earlier, where they shred the plastic, they wash it, they do this a couple more times, and then they reheat the plastic and they extrude it, which means they form it into pellets. And pellets are what manufacturers buy when they want to make anything out of plastic. And then is the optional part of this cycle. So possibly, those pellets could go back on a container ship, in a container, then they would go to the manufacturer's warehouse, and then possibly they might turn up as another plastic bottle anywhere in the world, incredibly unlikely to be New Zealand. Because the sad truth of the matter is that the New Zealand plastics recycling system runs at 23% efficiency. That means that 77% of plastics in New Zealand go unrecycled. They go into landfill. And we know that this is not a sustainable solution for waste management. Landfill liners are known to leak, and they are bad for the environment. They're toxic. Another truth is that over 50% of all of the plastics that are recycled in New Zealand, that 23%, are exported to foreign countries, like China and India. So this means that we never really own our plastic. We never really understand the value that it has as a resource. This really needs to change. So what are the current initiatives we have in New Zealand that would support this kind of change? New Zealand is the first country in the world to have adopted a zero waste policy nationwide. Funnily enough, a zero waste policy is exactly what it is described as. Zero waste. So it doesn't mean that you wouldn't throw anything away. It simply means that when you've eaten your apple, you know it will get composted, as some people have composting heaps in their garden. The majority of you probably do. It's less common in Dunedin because we don't really live in the one place for very long. But that process is a closed loop because you know that your apple is going to compost and that compost will feed a garden and then you can grow other things and the cycle goes on. I think that's the nitrogen cycle, is that it? I can't remember, it was a very long time ago. We also have the Waste Minimisation Act, which aims at supporting and encouraging initiatives and ideas that aim to eliminate waste. And the target date for the Zero Waste Initiative that we set is 2025. If we currently have a 23% efficiency for plastics recycling as a country, we're not really likely to hit that target now, are we? Another interesting thing to consider is that New Zealand is hoping, again by 2025, that date's quite popular, to have built a $1 billion aquaculture industry. Now that would be great. That would consist mainly of mussels, oysters, and salmon. However, according to research done by the Sir Peter Blake Trust, 50% of the rubbish on our shores is plastic waste. And hundreds and thousands of marine feeding animals like seals, whales, and dolphins are killed annually by plastic consumption. It blocks their stomachs, it poisons them, it kills them. And what's really concerning is that when plastic enters the ocean or water stream, it goes through a process called photodegradation. And this is where it is broken down into very small particles. And if these small particles, which are colloquially named nurdles or mermaid's tears, I liked that one, are consumed by filter-feeding animals, such as mussels and oysters, it damages their bodies. So our $1 billion aquaculture industry is unattainable with our current plastic waste problem. It's not going to happen. The other thing to consider is that while we did opt out of signing the second round of the Kyoto Agreement, we still have commitments to reduce our emissions to between 10 and 20% below those of 1990. So what am I suggesting? My idea is called plastication, and it posits the idea of a closed-loop plastics recycling system in New Zealand. This would involve a minimal restructuring of recycling systems in New Zealand that currently exist, with a completely recuperable investment in a processing facility that would allow us to reprocess our plastic waste in New Zealand. We wouldn't have to export or import our plastic waste. That's done with. Using the Renew process, we could become the world's first fully self-sustaining plastics industry in the world. That would be a really nice world first. Now, that is quite a daunting idea, to be the world first in a fairly new development, particularly with the technology. So, to ease your fears, there is a company called Perpetual, and they are based in India. They use the Renew process, and they take waste PET bottles and waste CDs, and they turn them into this common base feedstock, and from that, they make microfiber yarn blankets, and they make mink blankets feel really cold. I've tried one. They're incredibly warm. And according to Perpetual, this is an upcycled material because you can reuse your blanket as much as you like. It's also slightly less fire hazard than conventional blankets, I'm led to believe. So you're warm and you're a little bit safer, and you are using a recycled or upcycled material. So what are the benefits for New Zealand of going with this model? For a start, job creation. We always want more jobs. It's good for us. It helps our employment. If we constructed a processing facility, we'd have obviously construction jobs. Then we'd also have jobs to maintain the processing facility annually. We would also, for the first time, own a material resource that is a globally valued commodity. People would want to buy this common base feedstock. In India, they have contracts, that is Perpetual, the company I talked about earlier, with Samsonite and Marks and Spencers. Those are big corporations, and they sell to them exclusively at the moment. We would also be creating a new industry for New Zealand. So that means that we would be creating expertise and innovation knowledge. And if I have learned anything from hearing the other people here speak and meeting all of the people I met yesterday, it's that New Zealand is all about innovation. We care about innovation and we want to be innovative. And the two main ones for me, less plastic waste. We can all get behind that. We can have our billion-dollar agriculture industry, and we could potentially actually meet the zero waste target of 2025. This means there would also be less waste to landfill. Because of that 77% of plastic that ends up in our landfill, plastic only accounts for 8% of our overall waste stream. However, it takes up 20% of the volume in landfills. That's quite a lot of space. So if there's three things that you take away from my talk, I hope that it's this. Oh, there should be more slides. Awkward. Okay, three things. The first thing is a removal of export and import of plastic. We don't have to expend money on shipping our plastic away or bringing it back to make things with. The second is the removal of plastic waste from our waters and land. And the third was an addition of a self-sustaining plastics industry for this country. Wouldn't that be nice?
Thanks, Eleanor.
Thank you.
Couple of things.
Sure.
Perpetual, has it got a patent on the process?
The Renew process is patented. However, last year I entered my idea into the Audacious competition that Otago runs, and I secured a potential joint venture contract with them. They would help us set up a processing facility.
Does the process enable all the types of plastic to be munched up and turned into whatever you want them to be, or do we still have to filter out?
Unfortunately, you do still have to filter out. It allows for similar types. At the moment, it's
So
mainly...
what are we going to do with the unsimilar types?
You still do have that problem, yes. The idea is that in New Zealand currently, you use lots of different plastics. For instance, milk bottles are made of HDPE, which is number 2. If you look at the bottom on the milk bottle, it'll have
Are these the new milk bottles or the old milk bottles?
I think they're both made of the same material. It's just a new design, from what I've been led to believe.
Harder to recycle, I understand, but never mind.
It's okay. HDPE is 48% recycled in New Zealand, but that's just one of the many plastics that are available. But you can make anything out of PET, essentially, apart from the really high-impact plastics that are in your cars. So we would need to restructure a little bit in terms of what products were actually made of what materials, so that we could try and stream it all towards PET, which is recyclable with this Renew process. However, I did have a conversation with the lead researcher of Perpetual over the phone the other day, and he said they were looking into using that process so that you can still get the common base feedstock with other plastic types, because they realize it's quite a narrow target at the moment.
Could we afford to do it here? I mean,
yes.
It's a lot easier if we can ship them off. It's going to be more expensive?
No, according to my figures, which I got from talking to them, and I obviously did this business plan, it is affordable to create the processing facility in New Zealand and sell the common base feedstock to manufacturers within New Zealand for an affordable amount comparable to exporting the plastic, buying it back in, and then making stuff from scratch.
All right. Just one point. You said that 77% of the plastic we use is unrecycled.
Yes.
That's taking account of sheer laziness as well, right?
The figures were from Plastics New Zealand, and they were being very broad with their wording. So I'm not sure if that was including how much was actually just thrown away on the sidewalk, or if that's how much was thrown into a bin and then reprocessed and then, for whatever reason, not recycled.
Rejected.
the sad truth of the matter is, because of the scale of New Zealand as a country, which is beneficial for my idea because of your scale, it allows you to actually have this facility and it be profitable and work, there just isn't the research into how your waste management works. There just is no research on it because it just is seen as a waste of time because you know that you can do this. It's a model that the rest of the world uses. Everyone else ships it to China or India. But to me, it just seems silly when you can actually have a self-sustaining industry in a country. And recycling plastics uses 5 to 9 times less carbon emission than creating plastics from the raw feed, which is oil.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.